we oftentimes don't see everything. The reason is we've never faced it before. And that's what happens to us a lot. We get hit from the backside. We had no idea this was coming. How could we? The visibility wasn't there. We've never experienced it. How are we supposed to know? We think everything is fine, when in fact, it's not. And I know that when I was your age, at times I'd get very, very frustrated. You know, I'd want to have the wisdom, the experience, the knowledge of somebody that was many years older than me. And so sometimes what we do, obviously, is you find mentors, you work harder, you work longer, and you try and accelerate that process. I kept saying to myself and thinking about this, man, if only I had a class that could help me with that. What if there's a way to gain some of that visibility? Understand what maybe some others have done in the past. Get that experience today and kind of sort of test drive it. Try on that new coat. See how it feels. I don't have to buy it. In fact, there's no risk in doing it. That's what went through my mind.
The guys that are really blowing up, what pain did they solve? Was it something that they thought of? Was it something that they recognized that no one thought of? I mean, when you think about who's a massive success, you know, there's some really important things there, and think about what that need is that's unmet. If you think about the other businesses, what's their differentiator? What's their one thing they do well? And so the other point I made is, you need to figure out like what's your differentiator going to be. I have an ocean of choices. Why would I choose you?
I took the boiler room and the law firm, and I did both. And I took that compensation mentality and I took it as far as humanly possible. I knew there was opportunity, so I overcompensated. I paid people too much. Now, how does that hurt me as an entrepreneur? I make 10% less because I overpay. Allegedly, that's what some business schools would tell you. What I'm going to tell you is the 10 or even 20% that I overpaid people paid me back in spades. I have 82 people. We've been open for 9 years, and I've never lost an employee.
I can't tell you how that's going to happen. I can't tell you when that's going to happen. I can't tell you the ups and downs to get there. You got to believe, okay? And so you must be able to operate in a highly ambiguous environment and lead in that environment.
Entrepreneurs are long on ideas, but very short on execution or focus. It's extremely difficult. I see it all the time. And what happens is nothing really gets done to the full capacity. So we have a process to try to keep ourselves focused. And it's pretty simple. It's all about communication. We believe that radical stability allows for radical change.
What I like most about this class is it really gave us the opportunity to hear from not only very successful entrepreneurs, but also entrepreneurs that weren't so successful. So what it really helps is for us to really build a model in our head of what right looks like and actually live through some of the goods and the bad times of starting your own business and building a career in this entrepreneurial world that we're living in now.
What we do is every year, and even now, it's almost daily or weekly, we're constantly reviewing what's going on in the market, what is our business plan, and how can we make adjustments, because even talking to people at the studio, they're running numbers to the point where it's so mercurial, where they'll kind of prep a film and do their budgets, and they'll do it in multiple countries. And so they'll watch the, how strong the dollar is against Australia and New Zealand and the UK, and they'll, kind of watch what's going on in trends, and then they'll make the decisions.
We spent a lot of time and money developing our products, and we had a right. We had a right to try to enforce our intellectual property, which we did. If you don't, you lose your patents. If something comes across your desk, right, that is clearly something that is infringing or that you think is infringing and you don't act upon it, that gives somebody else the right to say, you are not enforcing your patent, thus your patent is no longer valid.
A handful of traits that in order to be successful in a family business, you need to have. That I feel. Respect, trust, you need to be humble, you need to have a written plan, you need to have buy-in, and you need to have accountability. My father saw in me that I was 6 for 6.
And most franchisors will tell you this. They wish they could go back and erase their first 10. But you can't. Because where you were for the first 10, you're figuring it out. And then when you're going forward, that's really who you've become. But you can't get to becoming a franchise without those first 10. I mean, they bought into something that wasn't as established.
It's critical that you create enough new revenue and more margin in the target acquisition to more than offset the cost of the regional and corporate infrastructure, or the model's not going to work.
And retail, whether or not you're in video games, it's a whole different ballgame in retail. You really, you can go out of business by getting too many orders because you got to figure out how to cash flow it. Right? Just because you get a Walmart PO doesn't mean you're home free, because the product can get right back at you if they don't sell. It's your job to sell, not theirs.
I've learned so many things along the way that have been textbook, for lack of a better word, and this is a good way that kind of you see the culmination of what you learn in school and how it varies in the actual execution.
Generally speaking, I really believe people are good. I am an optimistic person, and I think in order to wake up in the morning as a human being, it makes your life a lot better if you can be that way. If you have any interest whatsoever in being an entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form, you have to have that. If you can't do that, if you're a naturally pessimistic person, you probably don't even do it, don't even try. Not because you might not be very smart, but there's just too many downs. You have to be an optimistic person.
It comes down to what's called due diligence. Before the investors are going to put money in your company, they're going to conduct due diligence. That's when they kick the tire, they lift the trunk and look under the hood, and try to make sure that everything's running correctly. So what are the big risks for the investors? Okay, that your financials are all screwed up, okay, and they don't accurately state the financial condition of the business. That's probably the first thing. On the other hand, most startups don't have much financials, so they really focus on the projections, right? How much is it going to cost, to basically fund the business going forward? If we put $2 million in, how far along does it get us? So that's what we'll call financial due diligence. On the legal due diligence, it's more of a function of, are we getting what we think we're getting? All right, if we're going to buy, and if we think we're going to get 40% of the company, are we really getting 40% of the company? Okay, how many sleeping dogs are out there?
I said, I think it's probably time to sell. What I actually did, I went to our associates and sat down, probably the top 50 people, which is basically everybody from the janitor to drivers to the chief financial officer, and said, what should we do? Should we sell, or should we go acquire other companies? We really only had two options at that point. Things were starting to slow down. So everybody decided that we should be acquired rather than go out and acquire someone. And frankly, at that point, I really didn't want to personally guarantee a lot more money.
Even if you're not necessarily thinking of starting a business right away, it's a great class to take because it exposes you to different aspects of business, different industries, and you get to learn some really interesting stories from people that have a lot to share about the good and the bad of being in business.